Thank you very much for joining. For those of you that may be on here for your first time, we're the Global Hemp Association, and we host these 8 to 12 times a month. We break down all different topics. My goal, again, is to connect you and provide you guys a tool or a resource to build relationships and really connect the dots on the supply chain. So with that, I want to turn it over to each of our guests. I don't know who will want to start, but I'll start from my left. But Kyle Bingham, you're at the top. If you want to give a quick intro to who you are, how you kind of got into this, and what you're currently doing in the hemp industry, and then we'll pass it over to Dion after that. And then after this, we'll open it up for questions, a Q&A format, and discussion. Thank you very much for joining.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me, Mandy. So I've been working with a family operation where we've been working with niche crops. My dad got into certified organic cotton 30 years ago. And so at that point, that's kind of when we started looking for what's a better way to do this. How do we find more sustainable ways to farm, which is going to include how do we take care of our land and how do we find ways to keep paying the bank? I mean, we need both things. So as we got into different organic crops and different niche crops, we've tried everything from sesame to garbanzos to limas. Peanuts were a big product. We used to deliver a lot of peanuts for a while. And then as so last year, once Texas legalized hemp, it was kind of an easy, hey, we're going to try a little bit. And so we found a group that was going to be growing down here in Texas that understood the scale needed. So we started growing with kind of a halfway point to, we know where we want to go and we can't do that yet. So we started working, we grew 800 acres last year with the focus to sell every part of the flower or every part of the plant, the flower, the stalk, and the grain. And so we grew straight run seed, and we are at this point, we successfully grew 800. We'll probably go to about 3,000 acres. At this point, we see more promise in the grain than the flower. Obviously, that market doesn't look great. But if the ability to pay for the farmer with those components is what helps prove out the fiber market is where we're moving. So the decortication side of the operation is under construction right now, and hopefully we've got some good scale there. And at that point, once we have that volume of herd where we can approach buyers, that's where we're now being able to have those conversations about what a large scale could really look like. So thanks.
Thanks. And you're in what region? You want to talk about kind of?
Yeah. So High Plains, I'm in the High Plains of Texas. So we're going to be high altitude, flat brown desert. We're at the beginning of Tornado Alley. So that's where all the high winds start before they head up through New Mexico, Oklahoma. We are very similar to parts of Colorado, very different from where you're going to find in Houston, East Texas areas. We're much drier than those areas of Texas.
Cool. Dion, you want to introduce yourself next?
Andy, thank you so much for having me here. My name is Dion Oaks. I'm co-owner of Right Oaks LLC, a farming operation that's been growing hemp for 8 years. And then also we've got a High Mountain Pure, which is a grain processing facility where we process nothing but the seed into food products, hearts, protein powders, hemp seed oil, all that kind of stuff. And then we also are a part of First Crop Incorporated, which is a CBD brand and processing facility as well. So we got a lot going on here. We're a very large agriculture here in the San Luis Valley in southern Colorado is where I'm located. We grow under pivot irrigation. We did 3,500 acres 2 years ago, did 1,000 acres last year. And this year we cut it back quite a bit. We're only going to do 180 acres because we're spreading out to more of the local farmers, getting this crop worked into their rotation system and contracting out with our production facilities. So I look forward to hearing any questions you guys got. I'm also part of the U.S. Hemp Growers Association and many other organizations around. So any way I can help, I'm here. I look forward to answering some questions you guys have, and hopefully if you're looking to grow hemp, help you out there. If you're looking to any other resources I can help with, I'm here. So
very well connected. Cool. Robert, do you want to go next? And then Daniel?
Sure. Hello, everybody. I'm Bobby Ziner from Canadian Industrial Hemp. And what we have done is developed an AI-driven smart factory for hemp stock processing and fiber optimization. My background for 30 years was in secondary wood processing, and I got involved with advanced manufacturing technologies and computer integration and AI in manufacturing back in the late 1980s, early 1990s in the secondary wood world. That's how I came to the hemp industry, and we have focused on creating a system that is large scale, highly productive, very flexible, and gives us superior returns, primarily because we don't put stock in one end and get bast and herd out the other end. We put stock in the front end and get finished products such as biocomposite pellets and cottonized fibers out of the other end.
Okay. And Daniel. This is a very diverse group, so I'm really excited about these discussions and how we're going to talk about the scalability and opportunities that we have here. So,
yeah, thank you, Mandy, for having me, and it's great to meet all the guests, Bobby, Dion, Kyle. I'm grateful to be a part of this discussion. My background is in international development and education, so I have a lot of international experience. Working overseas in developing countries, mainly as an educator, preventative health volunteer with the Peace Corps, where I was in the Amazon, actually placed in Guyana. So I've lived in some pretty extreme environments and also grown in some extreme environments, mainly small scale. I would definitely describe it as small scale compared to the other speakers today. I definitely focus on polyculture and growing a lot of biodiversity in my gardens. And I am pursuing scaling up my gardens and having more of a homestead and or leading some cultivation operations out here, more focused on cannabis, broadleaf, hemp, drug varieties, and rather than fiber varieties. But I'm fascinated by many plants, and I've grown and cultivated a great variety of them. And hemp is definitely something that has piqued my interest because of its functionality from root to shoot, seed, stem, and flower. So I think it's a very important crop to cultivate, especially as we consider farming in the future, how to bioremediate our environment and how to grow sustainably. So, yeah.
Okay, well, thanks. So with that being said, there are some topics that right off the bat I'd really like to talk about and really talk about your guys' thoughts, each of your thoughts on the market for 2021, the good, the bad, and what do we and don't we know. So I'd love feedback kind of on an overcap of where you see the market and where do you see it going. Yeah, Kyle, if you want to start, Dion, if anybody wants to take the lead or somebody wants to throw in, I'm happy. Don't jump at once. Bobby, I think
I will just open up and say that I've had many discussions across a broad network of people in the industry. I have definitely heard that this year we are going to see a considerable reduction in the amount of hemp being grown for CBD. People are tremendously confused and feeling abused, and rightfully so. By the absurd world of regulations and rhetoric that keeps getting thrown at the CBD world. At the same time, there's a lot more enthusiasm for the fiber. Fiber is moving forward. I'd like to see more transparency myself in the fiber world, so that there's a greater understanding of how that value system or value chain is going to operate. Having said that, I think that it will become much more transparent and apparent over the next 2 years.
Well, and to add to that real quick, when do you think we'll find stability? And where do you think that will be? Fiber, seed, grain?
I think, it's a much bigger question than that. I mean, as I wrote in my last article, I genuinely believe that there could be 50 million acres. And what people are discounting is the opportunity that hemp oil for fuel or to be used for lubricants, that in itself could consume millions of acres of hemp grown for fuel, and it could be used in other applications. But I can see that there will be a huge mix, and there should be. In my article, I talked about the fact that there was 220 million acres of soy. Well, soy is a wonderful product, but it's not as good as hemp. It's not as nutritious as hemp. It can't give you fiber, and it can't give you chemistry. So it's wonderful that soy is a great crop and there's 220 million acres, but there's no reason there shouldn't be 50 million acres of hemp. So I'm going to say that I'm personally very optimistic. There's going to be lots of tumbles and falls. And if you're asking me, speaking forward, I generally say to people that they should be careful not to expect prices that they see today to be the prices they're going to operate with in 3 years. I personally believe prices will be 25 to 35% lower than they are today, simply due to oversupply. There'll be still people thinking that they want to be king of the jungle, so they're going to be seeing, going with the old adage that more is better. And that's not always the case. And a lot of people will get caught up in the inability to provide the consistency and quality that consumers are demanding today. I'm very optimistic for the future. I think that, we got to walk before we run. There will be some people tripping, but nonetheless, this is an industry that will move forward. The people behind it are progressive, hardworking. They've got vision. They've got passion. That's why things are going to move forward, because these people believe that there's a reason, an opportunity, but a need for the world we live in to be improved by hemp. That's why I'm optimistic.
Thanks. Dion, I saw you're shaking your head a couple of times. Do you have anything you want to add there?
No, great words of wisdom there. For us, it was our whole goal getting into this was another rotational cash crop for our farmers here locally. So how we saw that was grain and stocks. All the other byproducts that come out of stocks are great from that. But for a long-term, large-scale agricultural play for us in our region, pulling in with your grain drills, your combines, anything not specialty, that's where we saw it. Now, of course, CBD is what was paying the bills right away, so we jumped on that and got in where we could. But now it's infrastructure. I saw a comment come across earlier. It's infrastructure, and that's why we stepped back from so many acres on our side for the farm, because people didn't have a place to take their hemp to. I know many farms here locally that still have a lot still left over, and I'm helping them every day trying to move what they can. But there's so many acres here in our little valley that everybody's interested. They're hungry for a new crop, something different, and something that will help and has a lot of uses that they can get some revenue off of. So for that, We stepped back, built out our processing facilities. It's nowhere at scale of what we want to be at in the future, but we're at a pretty capacity on both sides of our processing facility. So I see it coming around more, especially right now, of people looking at grain and fiber because of what CBD's the past year. And I see that as a long-term play. But I think there's other avenues for the forage material, not just for CBD. There's other avenues we can look at for that as well that have been used in the past. So I think it's going to be great on all avenues of this. It's just getting the infrastructure set up.
Kyle, do you have anything you want to add also?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm going to just echo what Dion and Robert were saying. I think the learning to walk before we run, all that's important. And that's part of why our current facility, we still factor the CBD flower into the end product, but we're looking at, once we figure out the fiber and the grain side, at a certain point, that extraction grade product for CBD is going to be a waste product. We're going to grow enough grain and fiber, and we may be leaving that on the ground. We may be using it. The hybrids that are most successful in Texas right now do have a little more THC and CBD content in them. A lot of the low cannabinoid fiber varieties coming out of Canada, they don't have a lot of success down here. We have just found an Australian low cannabinoid fiber, the MS77, that looks pretty promising down here, but it's going to be interesting to see. At this point, I'm kind of in that research overload. I've got all these different things floating around in my head. We've gotten a lot of answers, but we're still trying to put that together into an efficient plan. And so for us this year, I think is going to be much more about refining what we did last year than doing anything new, and just creating repeatable processes versus trying to jump into something else.
Okay. Daniel, do you have anything you want to add?
Well, I was Googling before this in the morning, hemp industry, things like this. An article came up with Kyle in it where he's quoted as saying, if you don't know where your hemp's going this season, don't grow it. And I'm a pretty good reader. And what I took from the take of what's going on currently, and I think Robert spoke to it, is just an industry that's kind of evolving and coming out of its infancy. And just knowing that I want to get into this industry as well, and thinking about the back end of it and manufacturing and selling that product and having all those relationships set up is a big part of success. And I know a lot of hemp farmers in Michigan when I was in the Midwest who were doing some value-added products and were having some success with higher-end CBD strains, like for smokable flower. But I definitely want to see what folks think about, I know a lot of the folks today are large-scale producers, and generally it would be manufactured at off-site at a different location. But I'm wondering, what folks on the panel think about medium to small farms and how they can create value-added goods it creates a sustainable income for that farmer, or for that grower. I definitely want to cover that at some point today.
Yeah. Does anybody have anything they want to add to that right now? Go ahead, Bobby.
Well, I think that it all starts with the product, and it's real hard if you're a small farmer and you want to integrate directly into, some level of processing, to also act as your own distributor and marketer, et cetera, et cetera. So you better have a really clear focus on the product that you're going to be involved with, and have some insight into how you're going to actually market it. That would be one thing. The other thing for the smaller farmer, though, is that I've encouraged them in some articles that I've written that they should try to find some proven distribution agents who they can work with on an equitable basis. meaning that the money is always on the commodity side. You can't make a margin when you go up to at least that first secondary product level. I mean, in my case, I look at it, it's very different to have a bunch of bast fiber in your possession, or if you have some biocomposite pellets, because the bast fiber, I have to compete on a commodity basis. If I have the ability to produce customized biocomposite pellets, that's a value added opportunity. But I'm saying a small producer, needs to be realistic about, first of all, if they're going to be a producer of X, meaning bast fiber, what are they going to do with the herd, and vice versa? So it's a little bit more complex that way for the farmer. I would really, I've always been a strong advocate of the principles of a co-op. And there's no reason that, a farmer and an agent or a distributor, can't partner and create specific products for specific markets, and perhaps create a network, a cluster of people in a similar area of production over a wider geographic area, so they can actually create somewhat of a market. But I've always been a believer that fundamentally people should do what they do and do it the best they can, and not be a jack of all trades. So I really encourage people to collaborate, come together, and support one another to make a reasonable living on, the whole growing, processing of some type, and being able to market a product and generate a profit that can then get reasonably or equitably shared.
Awesome. Thanks, Drew. Dion, go ahead.
No, I really like what you said there, and it's what we have with our crop operation. We have some smaller farms. By that I mean 1 to 10 acres. Compared to our small scale is 60 to 120 acres. That's a minimum amount we do. So with that, we like to compare it to really the beer market right now, because that's where we were at before we got into hemp was barley, that kind of stuff. But you got your big breweries, your Coors, your Budweiser, all that. And then you got your craft, little niches that you can go into that are a little bit more ideal for specific products, your microbreweries, that kind of thing. Really like to compare to that. One, because smaller scale, your 1 to 10 acres, you're not going to be profitable on a very good amount by going for grain on 1 acre or stock on 1 acre. You need some volume, you need all that kind of stuff to play on that commodity type market there. And so it doesn't really fit that. But on a CBD side, or more cannabinoid side, you could grow a specific variety for X amount of product that you have a contract for or buyer on the back end, and it can be more specialty rather than mass produce or on a larger scale. So just some thoughts there.
Dion, you have anything you want to add? Kyle, I'm looking at Kyle and talking to Dion.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. I mean, we, as my operation, we've stopped delivering commodities. We take products to whatever level makes sense, whether it's a wholesale product, whether it's our own cotton cooperative that markets our cotton worldwide, whether it's our wine label where it takes it straight to the consumer. You have to find, what can you do? What are you going to excel at? And then develop those markets. And if you go to a buyer who you can't produce, you're not going to be able to work with them, move on, find someone who does. There's so many great farm to table restaurants or businesses that want those smaller, those smaller growers products because they want that local. That trend is there. So that's definitely something each person, you just got to figure out what's going to work for you.
Cool. So I've got a discussion that I want to get started about kind of what Robert brought up and this scalability model and what does it look like to be sustainable and co-op model. And I saw a pilot program suggestion, that was dropped in here. But before I do, do you want to ask your question real quick?
Oh, absolutely. So I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is William Thomas. I'm a distributor of a supply chain and packaging. So when we speak on these co-ops to get into the end market, this is a place I really specialize in, and I was hoping to move get involved in this presentation to make some symbiotic relationships. So just wanted to throw my information up here in the chat and continue to listen.
Cool, thank you. Okay, so I really want to talk about this breakdown of this supply co-op opportunity and start some discussion about what this looks like. What are the reservations and what innovations need to happen to move this forward? Is it co-op? Is it the pilot program? I'd really like some feedback from each of you in this, around this. Bobby, you want to lead this? You're on mute again.
Okay, sorry. I'm sorry. I was looking at the chat board. What was your question, Mandy? I'm sorry.
That's okay. I want to address where innovation needs to happen and what challenges are we facing when we're talking about a co-op model or this pilot program. It comes up quite a bit, both of those or a coalition, the collaboration. What do we need to do? And where do you see opportunity for innovation to move this forward?
You're talking about innovation in the concept of co-ops?
Yes.
Well, the reality
of moving the supply chain along, moving the industry forward in whole. And is it co-op?
Well, even though it sounds self-serving, the reality is there isn't an industry without decortication.
Yes.
So, everything else is a very nice story, and it's very exciting, and it's very interesting, and it's meaningless. And, I'm known for the fact that because of my background in advanced manufacturing technology and wood fiber, that I look at processing of hemp fiber as inevitably benefiting from the same thing that we found in wood processing. High-level automation, intelligent integration, driven by AI. On a pro forma comparison, we project that our margins will be more than 100% greater than the existing processing paradigm. Now, the only relevance of that is that if indeed the hemp market is to grow, we need to bring prices down. So I believe that our operation is in a position to reduce its prices considerably and still be profitable. But I think that there will be smaller processors and people who don't look towards automation as a means of bringing down their costs, but more important, giving them consistency and quality control on the products that they produce. So, I look at it very carefully as well from the perspective that I don't want to see this industry collapse unto itself. It needs to become more productive, more effective in order for the prices to come down. But I want to make this clear. The one place where it shouldn't come down is to the farmer. Because the nature of the industry and the opportunity for all the different levels is to make a good living. And, I'm not a farmer. I have no relations that are farmers. But you don't need to be a genius around the industry and just being in the world to understand that every time the shit hits the fan is always blowing on the farmer. Because there ain't nobody there who's going to protect him. Mm-hmm. So I say, we need to find a way. I'm not talking about saying to the farmer, no, we're cutting your price, right? They take their own risks inherent in what they do. But I'm saying we've got to find a way to be more productive, more effective, because we are in a competitive world. The reality is also for everybody that from a fiber perspective, I believe we're going to be bioengineering our way into biocomposite fibers and fabrics and solutions that we haven't even thought of today. I mean, people have got to remember that it was bioengineering, AI-driven bioengineering that came up with the vaccine for the COVID. That's all it was. It was AI-driven bioengineering. And if they can do that, I mean, for God's sake, they'll also find a way, I believe, in the next 20 years to bioengineer oil so that it will biodegrade in a reasonable time frame. That's just about playing with molecules and atoms, and that's what they've been doing. Sorry, diatribe.
And that's all right. Someone said, would consortium, and be a better term than co-op or collaboration? We throw these words around all the time. But yes, Bobby, I like what you said.
My last comment would only be this, that if people are going to collaborate, you have to understand from the beginning that all parties want or should want or expect to make a profit from their collaboration. And it should be addressed that way between people. They should cooperate, they should collaborate, and it should be a business relationship with clear expectations and understanding of one another and, a clear path forward. Nothing worse than collaborating with people that just want to learn from you and really aren't interested in doing any work along the way.
Yes, Kyle, you have anything you want to add?
Sure. I was just going to pitch something real quick. We throw the word co-op around a lot. And as a concept, I like it. As a legal vehicle in the U.S., it may not be the optimal legal vehicle because it is going to limit the participating partners to only be farmers. So if you're trying to bring in farmers and an investor class, you would be looking at an LLC. So if you're once you get the concept down of what you're looking for, you're going to want to look at it from the legal side of what's the best legal vehicle. But there's an element that sharing resources, yes, we're going to get a lot farther.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I'm just curious as a whole, right? What does this look like? I'm curious from the farming side, because me not being a farmer and understanding that there's this reservation of, what does co-op mean and where has it failed them to where we have an opportunity to make this change, and what does that look like? And yeah, I'm curious. Dion?
Yeah, no, that's exactly one of the points I was going to bring. In our area, co-op is that word big time, because around farming potatoes, grain, that kind of stuff, a lot of people have been screwed in a co-op model. And there's other ways around it, like Kyle said, that can be more beneficial and can have a lot. But for us, it's, we always start at the farm. That's where it all starts, which is great. We got to take care of the farmer, but we've got to know the back end of everything before us as farmers put out. What is this crop going for? What are the specs? What variety? All this other things. So there's so many pieces to the puzzle here that need to be put together. And I feel right now in this industry, that's where we're at. There's a lot of step back, many people that have been in it and saying, okay, now let's start getting variety trials done at many different aspects. What does this look like on a fiber specific crop? What does this look like on a dual purpose? Because here in the US, we're going through a lot of just data sheets or he said, she said type stuff of this is better, this is the way. And for us on our operation, we go prove it. Hey, you tell me that's the best variety, whatever. Let me put it in the ground and let me see how it does. Because in this situation where we're at, it could grow totally different than where somebody else is at that thinks this is the best variety for this use. So there's so many pieces to the puzzle here that we put together. But for us, it's always start at the back end, that buyer, that contract, whatever's got to be in place, because that person offering that should be telling you this is a variety you need to grow. For Coors, that was a thing. We had a contract. They said this is a variety you got to grow. Guess what? This is what you're getting paid for. This is a spec. This is your dockage. Boom. It's all set in place. Now for us, it's why would we go put in 1,000 acres of hemp and not have a well, we had majority of it contracted, but on the other end, we were still learning. And we're at a new industry here, and somebody's got to do it, and not today. So that's why we have stepped in and put in the facilities for this reason. Now, is it going to turn into a co-op model? No, I don't think so. But I think there's ways we can work with other regional processing facilities like Kyle at his location, our location, this, that, or the other, but it's not, I don't see it right now as a co-op type model for what we're looking at.
Interesting. Yeah.
It's a lot cleaner from the business side to allow someone to step into an entity with easy exit strategies. They know the expectation up front, and that's kind of one of the issues. That's where co-op, it's either successful here in my part of Texas or it's the curse word. So it goes back to any business deal. There has to be those clear expectations. I mean, I'm sending grain up to Dion next week to de-hull for me. And so there's already, we love working together, but we get those expectations. What's this? Are the specs there? When we de-hull, we were like, you know what? We're just going to send a small batch through. We don't have specs. We don't know what it's going to look like. And we'll figure out on the other end and just run a small test batch and move on from there. So I think there's an extent of, you still we want to work together and find it. But sometimes co-ops aren't the best legal vehicle.
Okay. Yeah. I'm like I said, this is something that comes up all the time as to what a strategy look like. And I think,
first of all, Mandy, if I can just say that there's a gentleman who I've spoken to a number of times, Dwayne. He has a Scandinavian name that I won't even attempt to pronounce, who is very big on co-ops in Colorado. I believe it's I'm CIHC, he's CHIC.
Yep.
And he's educated me to a very limited amount that there are different rules in different states with regards to that. But look, I mean, I'm talking about whether you want it to be an LLC or however it's structured, people working together. Yes, there should be some contractual underpinnings, because people should just not go in on blind faith, especially if they haven't worked with the person before. So, I mean, expectations are important. And I'm not saying that co-ops are good or not good. I'm saying they're a good way to introduce new technology, which is very expensive, into the marketplace, because you have built-in suppliers. And depending on what you produce, you might have built-in customers. But again, every situation has to be looked at under its own circumstances.
Absolutely.
Mandy, I think this gentleman was asking or talking about Artie Armquist. Is that who you have been speaking to, sir?
I'm sorry, who?
Artie Armquist.
Wondering if you connected with Artie out of Colorado.
Yeah,
no.
For the. Oh, okay.
I don't believe I have. I was talking with Dwayne.
Oh, okay. Because Artie has a lot of information about co-ops in Colorado.
I see.
He's been a co-op farmer, so he really knows.
Listen, I've heard very good things about people who are associated with co-ops. And interestingly enough, statistically, co-ops have a much greater likelihood of success than private business. Actually, over a 10-year period, 30% greater likelihood. So, I mean, there's a reason for that, but nonetheless, it's nothing can be, when it comes to people, you can't give out prescriptions.
Well said. Thank you.
There was a question for you, Dion, about seed. Wondering about varieties that you're using and yield for your grain. Sorry, not seed.
Yeah, so we grow many varieties every year. Been trying all kinds of stuff. Like I said, trying our stuff. So like this year, we've got a trial with 13 varieties. This is a project with the state of Colorado, but the 4 or 5 varieties we've been growing every year are yielding anywhere from 800 to 1,500 pounds per acre of grain. And then stocks really depend on what your crop is looking like through the year, how you're harvesting. I mean, if you're using a stripper header, you're leaving that stalk standing. You're just taking your grain and foliage off. So your stalk weight is a lot better. If you're going through at the combine and having to take 3 foot or 4 foot of the top of the plant or 2 foot, now you've got a balled up mess that you got to come back and swath inside of your author with your stock. So it's still going in with your tonnage, but the quality is what we've seen from that. That's been a little bit different, but we've seen all over the board on stocks, anywhere from ton an acre to 2 to 3.5 ton an acre. We haven't personally seen anything above 4 ton an acre on a dual crop side. Now we've done trials like we did last year of very high plant rate, anywhere from 100 to 140 pounds per acre, which is just ridiculous, way up there, but it was part of a trial. And we've seen the numbers go a little bit higher, but it's all dependent on that variety and when you're taking it. I mean, are you letting it go to flower? Are you not letting it go to flower? So genetics, seed plays a huge part in that downstream process of what you're taking it to.
What about end products? I saw that there were a few questions about end products that your farms or that you guys were either through R&D or actually selling into. I thought, Kyle, you had made a comment that you were into papers and.
Yeah, so our initial goal was going to be animal bedding and absorbents because that's an easy herd product to produce that can be a building product for other types of products. We also have been looking, so the fiber coming out of our crop, it's got too many internodes, so it doesn't have the tensile strength for some of your hemp fiber products you might expect. So that could be a really good fit for some paper. So we're working with a paper mill there. We've picked up more conversations with bioplastics. They may be a little ways out there, but we want to start feeding them with material now so we can have a better understanding of specs and scale and what that might look like. But I've got to work with before plastics that biodegrade once they're mixed with soil and the microbials in the soil and water. They're biodegrading in 30 days and they're gone in 6 months. And so even if that takes us a little while to get to, we definitely want to keep feeding that R&D side there.
Do any of you know numbers on production, grain versus fiber production right now? How much is actually being grown?
I can tell you in Canada, out of I would say about 180,000 acres in total, you probably have a total of about 15 to 20,000 being grown for fiber, most of it being grown for seed. I think I'd be surprised if we had more than 5,000 acres, if that much, being grown for CBD. Now, Canada was growing seed 97% up until about 4 years ago. So, but you know, seed is a good, stable opportunity, and it is decent. It's excellent for a rotation crop. Doesn't require fancy combines or anything. So, I mean, it's a good solution there too. I'd just like to ask the gentleman, if I could, if you looked at a crop grown specifically for fiber, so you're going to put, a great many more numbers of plants per acre, and it's the ideal varietal where you want to optimize the fiber or the mass, the fiber mass in the stalk. What do you think is realistic to be expected from a well-developed and maintained crop per acre? How much tonnage?
I'm guessing that question's for me.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, like I said, last year we did some trial plots at 60 acres per trial plot. The minimum amount per acre we planted was 50 pounds per acre, which is a little bit lower than what some articles are saying on just a fiber specific crop. They're saying 60 pounds per acre, give or take. But from that all the way up to 140 pounds per plant rate, so very, very high. We didn't have anything yield over 5 tons per acre.
5 tons per acre.
Majority of it was around 3.5 to 4 tons.
And what was the height of your crop?
The 120 acre portion of it was about 10 and a half feet tall.
Right.
A 160 acre plot was about 8 to 9 feet tall. Mm-hmm. And our other plots that were planted a little bit later got about 7 to 8.5 feet tall.
I've seen some pictures of crops in, I believe it was Kentucky, where they show them getting up to 14, 15 feet. Are you familiar with those at all? Do you have any idea of the varietals used there?
I think that was during the trial period when Sunstrand and some others were doing some test plots with the state there. And if I recall, Gin Ma and some SS Beta and 2 other varieties that they had going on with that got really, really tall.
Right. Is there any disadvantage to going that tall?
Well, that sprinkler behind me in this picture right here can be a major disadvantage because it starts creating some problems when it gets too high.
Right.
So
interesting to know.
The picture behind is the actual crop that got 10 feet tall. So those bars up on there, you could not see very well.
Got it.
So,
well, that's very interesting. So,
for us, pivot irrigation has major advantages and some major disadvantages along with that. So I think, you're going to get a lot more tonnage, and a lot of these numbers you see where people are getting 6+ tons per acre. Yeah, that's possibly off 14-foot tall crop. That's maybe 60 pounds per acre. But for us, we got to think of it realistic wise for the farmer, for equipment that's coming into that field to harvest that, as well as getting it out of the field and into because for us, we go in, we harvest, we want to get,
wouldn't you just swath that if you're growing them to 14 feet?
Yeah, creates a little bit of difficulty on your draper belts on inside of a swather, or your rotor head in a swather as well. So you got pumpkins inside your rotor head on a swather, and can get bound up pretty easily with a crop that you're trying to push over that's 14 foot tall.
Got it. Okay,
So
good to know. Thank you.
We use draper well, and that's fine. But again, you got a draper that's only 4.5, maybe 5 foot deep, and you're trying to lay a stock on there that's 14 foot inside of that draper head, where now you're trying to drop it through a hole that's only 3 or 5 foot wide. Now you got some different problems there. So it's all about, like I said, seeing that end product, getting that relayed to the farmer, getting that relayed to, okay, how tall does it go? What are we using it for? Are we going to be taking off X amount of the top for grain? That could be a little bit different. So there's so many pieces right there that need to be looked at as well.
Got it. Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. So there are a lot of questions that come up, you guys, about regenerative farming and some of the practices and the viability of it, for scale. Can you guys speak to, some general practices? And especially as we start talking about the carbon exchange and no-till and so forth. Can you guys speak to that a little bit? And I'm sure, Daniel, you've got some that you can add here as well. Dion?
Yeah, sorry, I was writing a chat message there that Rusty could not go see Kyle because he will drink too much wine. So, sorry.
That's awesome. So I was curious about the regenerative practices. Kyle, you want to jump in?
Yeah, our primary focus is going to be water usage. And that's where we stay away from no-till. I live in a desert. Anything we grow consumes water. And so we're definitely envious of those areas that can run a successful no-till. I love the idea of a no-till, but that's one reason we don't run the no-till. So we run, every area is going to have to figure out what's going to work for them. Like, what's your most important commodity? And for us, that's water for us. So we have our high value crops, which we will irrigate. We do have a weak aquifer, so we do have some irrigation available. But then everything else, we're always looking at how much water does it need? Can we grow it dry land? We've got plenty of acres up here, so we don't mind growing at a 60% reduction in crop on a dry land basis and just grow it cheaper. There's ways of doing these things to figure out what works for each person from an economic standpoint. We love to use a lot of compost. There's a couple microbial products we'll use. Good rotation is very crucial. Every plant is going to give and take. And so it's just kind of putting that together for you, what your operation, what's going to excel for you.
Yeah, same thing where we're located is that water is an issue. It's gold right now here. So it was great to get hemp in here as something with a lower use, but there's a lot of things that come with that, of like Kyle's doing there, the regenerative part of the no-till, the this, that, the other, keeping that soil intact. So you're not tilling as much, but I think hemp can play a huge, huge part. I wanted to, if that's okay, Mandy, I just wanted to ask one of the other chat questions here was sorry, let me pull that back up. The risk of what this industry is going through right now with the regulations and farmers and all the other deals. I think it's great that there's so many regulations, or not so many, there's some regulations coming out on the, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
We can hear you fine.
Okay. My computer just went black, so about that. It's great that there's some regulations on the back end here of some of the final products. But really, guys, as a whole industry here, we need to look at how rated right now the farmer is inside of this hemp industry compared to many other industries out there. I mean, it's a huge ordeal right now about how much regulation is going on around the farmer itself. If you look at potatoes, if you look at wine, if you look at barley, anything rye that's going into a finished product, and even going to an alcohol on the back end, that farmer is not having to pay a registration fee, a fee to grow a certain amount of acres, and having a certain test on the back end of this crop that if you go for a specific fiber, you possibly won't even have a flower material on this crop to even test. It's just going to be leaf. So why, and it's really, it comes down to people that are on this call or in the industry to move this forward. There's so many farmers out there right now that don't want to grow hemp because of this exact reason. And we can't scale it to where this industry can because of this exact reason of having so much regulation on the farmer. The farmer's got a hard enough job right now with keeping it, getting a genetic that's less than 0.3 so they don't have to destroy it. Now we're putting all these other regulations, fees, all this stuff. So just one point I wanted to put out there, and that's what we support daily from our state side to the federal side to anywhere else we can help, is really understanding. If we're growing 300 acres of barley right now that's going for Coors, we get a contract, we put that in the ground, we grow it, and guess what? That alcohol product on the back end is what's getting regulated. It's not saying, okay, you're growing X amount, we're going to do this. Now, don't get me wrong, hemp is a little bit different because it's in its raw state. It's got CBD and THC in a raw matter, in the raw, where in your raw grains, you don't have an alcohol content. It's got to go through a process to get there. But again, we're at a point where in order to scale this industry and get to the next level of where it can go and has a potential to go, we have to all be on the same page of quit tightening down the farmers on what's going on.
Great point. Something that comes up. Bobby, go ahead.
I just want to say to support Dion in what he was saying, though, that I think that it really, it's gone to absurd proportions. You know, alcohol doesn't get the same scrutiny that hemp gets. And it's all just politics, and it's all a disgrace. And really, if you think about it, in the whole cannabis community, which includes the cannabis and the hemp, we really should look at having a day where we threaten to close down the country so that they understand that, you know, they're feeding us nonsense. I mean, they've had long enough to do the clinical studies that they talk about to understand. They don't need to understand over 20 years if the milk comes from the cow that's been fed the biomass 2 years ago, is the child going to get some type of craziness from that? I mean, it's enough. Yeah. And we all know it's enough, but we all sit back and kind of go, gee, that's too bad. You know, hemp is such an important thing for North America, for the world. And we just can't let them lie to us continuously and not do anything about it. It has such opportunity for employment. It has such opportunity to improve our environment. It really is time to say enough. And we're the people who say enough. You know, let it be known that we've had enough of this nonsense. 0.3, 0.2, 0.1. I mean, I don't know if anybody else has ever tried to smoke hemp, boy, but you're not going anywhere. And at this particular point, they've made us crazy enough about, you know, this is hemp and you can't do this and that. Come on, enough is enough. So let's just go on and allow farmers to make some money and allow people to make some money and improve our world. But enough is enough.
Dion, I think you bring something up, and a really good point when it comes to it really is up to the people that are in the industry to create that, to get out of this chicken and egg, you know, circle.
They keep distracting us. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like the gorilla that goes through the party, the video, you know, and count.
Count the balls.
Yeah, I mean, they keep distracting us with the nonsense.
Well, and it's the same thing with the feed industry right now. I mean, the Hemp Feed Coalition, that's what we're going through constantly. Is okay, Europe's got all these studies done, but guess what? We can't use any of those. We got to do our own
because
studies.
They're stupid. We're the only ones in the world who are smart. Everybody else is stupid.
It's just one of those things that, again, in order for this to expand, we have to be able to use all portions of this crop, pre-processed, post-processed, whatever it is, to tap major industries here that can scale this in a very beneficial way for the whole United States.
Amen. Hallelujah. And again, I encourage everybody here to start thinking about how many people out there in North America do support the cannabis and hemp industry. Forget about the nonsensical politicians. But we all know how many people actually do. And if we basically called for a day of support to say that, anybody who spends 10 minutes on the internet will find the truth, period.
So with that, then how do we, one of the questions that was asked back to the regenerative farming is, what are those obstacles as the industry continues to grow? And Daniel, you want to add to that? Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking about that a lot today. I think I can contribute to the discussion in that regard. I think some of the issues, one is just having a definition, but I am hesitant to, let big power players or large corporations or politicians decide. We've seen what happened with the organic movement, and I still think it's great to have those standards, but I think that's a challenge, like defining what is regenerative and then scaling it up. But I think I can just sort of echo what Kyle was talking about, water and nutrients. I mean, those nutrient cycling and water, I think I always think of it like, yes, we're growing crops, but it's the how are we getting there? It's about regeneration. And it's also being inspired by other farmers who are successful, like Joel Salatin in Virginia, in the Shenandoah Valley. He's successful from a profit standpoint with grass-fed animals, but he's also built up, several feet of topsoil on a landscape that was degraded from heavy tilling over many decades in the Shenandoah Valley. So I think each region has a responsibility to document, water usage, but also how does water leave your farm, and thinking about your farm as a part of the ecology, the greater landscape. Because I really think we're having a tragedy of the commons moment with our atmosphere, with our soils. It's just, we're all trying to get as much value as we can, but we're ultimately kind of kicking the can down the road. So I think regenerative standards need to be really stringent, but I'm very hesitant to define them. And I think it should be a collaborative effort. And I do think, beyond North America, but like Kyle said, depending on where you are, your climate, the state of your soil, the state of your aquifer, you're going to be taking very different actions than, a farmer who's blessed with a ton of water up in Minnesota. So I think it needs to be a flexible definition, but one that takes into consideration the greater ecology and how each farm rates in terms of nutrient cycling, and obviously other pesticides and chemicals that we know it's documented, that are contributing to the great nitrogen runoff in the Gulf of Mexico. So I'm just excited to see. I think it's very challenging. Last point, I'm coming at it from someone who's not in ag their whole life, seeing how folks can transition. I think that's the greatest challenge. And I've seen some folks posting about It's interesting. Kyle mentioned that he's done organic cotton. I know that a lot of farmers struggle going from chemical intensive industrial and then trying to transition to a different model. That's a totally different problem than it is taking a valley that's somewhat degraded and regenerating it. But I wonder what you guys think about how high that standard should be and who should be deciding that, and whether you think that can have a really meaningful impact on our environmental crises that we're facing.
Kyle, you want to chime in on that?
Yeah, I mean, that's where we've spent a bit of time lobbying different groups, whether it's in the state legislature, whether it's on the national level, whether it is right now, some of the NOP organic certification rules are, they're getting to be so strict that we've considered dropping our certification. We're talking about the group of growers that my dad and where they started. These are the guys that helped build out those standards. And now they're getting to the point that they can't maintain those. And if they drop, you suddenly look at a system that when you're forcing out the old veterans who built it because your standards are so unrealistic and impossible to maintain, that's where I was listening to JT Thompson, he's the senator from Pennsylvania, he'll be heading up the Ag Committee. I got to talk to him last week, and he had a really great point. He was like, when there is something being decided and is when you're lobbying, whatever's going on, if you're not at the table talking, you're probably on the menu. And that's where we just can't be complacent. That component, working through groups. So I'm president of the Texas Hemp Growers Association, where we lobby in Texas, and then we'll work with national hemp growers on the national level, like be connected. And we've got way too many hemp groups right now, but we've worked hard to work with every single one of them, because if we as the industry have that united front, going to lobby, going to work with these organizations, that's how we're going to get progress. But if we show up ready to fight it out in front of these certifying agencies or legislators, they've got better things to do. They just don't care.
Awesome.
Could I follow up with a second question, Mandy?
Of course, yeah.
So I was Jonathan Dienick is a professor at University of Hawaii's Tropical Agriculture School, and I was kind of working with him a bit. And he's really into precision agriculture and using satellites and drones to measure temperature on your fields year round, and hot spots, cold spots, disease spots. I mean, what do you guys think the potential for using AI and high tech to help a lot of these farms suddenly make better decisions with water, with nutrients, and then get ahead a lot of these issues, but also, help the environment while they're doing it using that technology?
Bobby? Dion, go ahead.
Well, hit it, Bobby.
I'm not really sure, that I can address that. AI, again, is not a magic box. It's not a magic solution. AI is simply high-speed processing with a little bit of a different approach to get to the optimum solution. Now, all that means is wherever you have a problem or a situation where you have multiple choices, as long as you can qualify exactly what it is you're trying to achieve, you can benefit from AI. AI is fundamentally about the ability to monitor and control up to 100,000 separate computer systems in real time simultaneously. So you have precision control, and you have the ability at the same time to be processing data faster than any other commercial application available. It's great. I mean, the answer is it's great. The answer is it costs a lot of money. And the answer is usually the money that you spend, you get back in a reasonable time frame. If you know what you're doing and if you know exactly what you want to achieve, there's no reason you won't achieve it. You know, way back at the beginning, AI was originally composed of 3 elements: scanning, robotics, and most important, expert systems. AI is simply about translating the logic and the rules that an expert like Kyle or Daniel or Dion would use in their situations to come up with the best possible solution.
Sure.
The only difference is the system will remember that situation indefinitely. And the next time it happens, it will go back to what it learned the first time. And the third time, it will still go back to the first and second time. And eventually it will come to its own logical conclusion. That is AI. Is it worth it? How important is precision?
My take on it with the farming side is exactly what Bobby said, the time factor. I mean, the money factor is the time factor. The money is where many of these companies that have come to approach us as, soil sensors, drone flying, this, that, the other. Okay, now majority of that was launched on a very small scale indoors, possibly, where it's a little bit more cost effective. Now you go to circles, 120 acres, and they're wanting to try X amount on a large scale to get into this industry. And now your ROI is a very long time. And what is it going to change from what I'm doing currently on the operation? Time, yes, it could save a lot of time depending on what you're trying to put in there. But how reliable is it? What is it backed by? And ultimately, it's price. I mean, when you're same with many of the soil amendments, that new soil amendments that come out around cannabis specifically have been on a small scale indoor. So you equate that to, okay, a pint of X goes for X amount of dollars. Now you say, okay, I need a tanker load. I need a semi. And they're like, whoa, what? Man, that's a lot of money. It's just not correlated yet to large scale farming at this point. And I think there's some systems out there, but again, it's coming back to the money. What does it cost up front and what's my ROI over X amount?
But even then, they can say whatever they want and you can believe whatever you want. And in some cases, it's not going to materialize. And in other cases, it will. So they call them the early adopters. They go in. If they're right, they make a killing. If they're wrong, they lose some money. And, you know, everybody gets to play the game the way that they want to. And that's the way it should be. Everybody has their own plan, their own vision, their own business model. And, you know, that's how it should be pursued, because as soon as they start listening to other people, things go off kilter. We should all stick to our vision. But what we do share is our belief that hemp is a valuable, important crop that should be promoted and should be respected, actually.
Okay, so with that, Rusty, I know you have quite a few test plots you guys did. I'd love to hear a little bit about what you guys have found, what you're finding. I'm following you guys on social media, and I love that you guys are sharing results and stuff like that. But yeah, I'd love to introduce you, and if you don't mind, and share a little bit about what you're working on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. What's up, buddy? So by way of quite a few people in the room here talk about support and kind of giving, a platform to put things out. We're growing fiber. I mean, that's what we're going after. We want to dictate what's the best varietals for our region. Just as kind of like Dion was talking about the height at what they grow, we are taking weekly clippings out in the field and measuring them. We're basically putting all together as far as the amount of rainfall that we're getting, the amount of growth that we're getting during that time. And of course, then we're starting to let them ret in the field at those stages to figure out definitively from like my own experience, what type of lignin and cellulose content levels are at each week, what the weight of those are, how long it takes them to ret, what the retting process looks like. And of course, then at the end of that retting process, we're basically trying to weigh those as well to figure out what's the amount of weight of kind of that biomass that we're losing from field through the retting process. That's important for me because when we go out into the field, one of our men on the southwest side of the state right now, I believe it's at like 11 feet here in Michigan. And we still have probably about a month left of growth on it, which is extremely awesome. So we want to know, nobody can definitively tell us, what kind of, at what stage is going to net you the exact best fiber. You talk with someone that grows in Romania, Lithuania, up in Canada, whereas Robert was talking, everything's been kind of focused on the grain side or the dual cropping. There's so much that we have to capture as far as data that when I think about AI systems and things like that, it's like we have to be thinking about that. But at a more foundational level for me, I need to understand this so that we can explain and educate farms so that we can talk to operations that come to me or say, hey, this is what we're seeing and this is what to be expected. There's so many things that we're finding that there's a lot of assumptions. There's a lot of predications based on, a one-page document from 1989 in Ukraine. It's like that doesn't really match up with what we're seeing in the field. And just like Dion was saying about the 5 tons that he was getting, like that's from a dual crop on the high side, or I'm sorry, 4 tons, they said, from a dual crop. That equates really good for me because the fiber varietals that we're seeing growing next to some of our grain varietals, they're, twice, 2.5, 3 times as tall. So if they're getting a decent amount of stock off of those grain varietals after that top cutting, and then who knows how much is left, 3 feet potentially, I'm thinking those numbers are going to be a lot better. So this year for us is another year of collecting as much data as we can and sharing it with everybody. That's the biggest thing. Is you can talk about the people on this call. Well, heck yeah, let's support one another, because that's the biggest thing. Is we talk about getting to the point of where we can lobby, the S1260 that was a couple of weeks ago in Washington, D.C., just nothing happened. And Kyle, I think maybe you might be able to explain a little bit more. Didn't Texas basically was just kind of at a standstill, didn't go anywhere. And that's what we're seeing. And it's because you've got a large contingent based of CBD people, and then you have your fiber growers who are more your traditional farms. And so you kind of have this culture clash between CBD farmers and between traditional row crop farmers. And, when you come from more of a black market and now things are legal, you tend to kind of bring in some of that, holding things close to your chest and not wanting to necessarily work together with other people, which is absolutely like that's going to happen. Right. So our biggest thing is I love what you're doing. We're bringing people together and kind of doing all of this. And that's simply what we're doing is, okay, what's missing? Where are the challenges? And those challenges make me happy because it means that other people aren't spending the amount of resources and time to figure that portion out or figure out that secret.
Absolute opportunity, right? This is definitely a time for innovation and opportunity. And I speak to collaboration. I hear it all the time. And as broken as the industry has been, there's this outreach from everybody in the industry to where do we come together? How do we link arms? And so I think you said it well, supporting each other and really within our own networks, striving to grow the industry and, proving concepts so that we can regain trust where it's been lost and broken. So Well, does anybody else have anything that they want to add or any other questions? I have tons of questions. We're already at an hour and a half. I hardly got through very many, but I want to thank you guys very much for joining as guests. For those of you that have been here before, you'll know all of these meetings are transcribed, meeting minutes are edited and sent out to all of our members. And then the video is shared. I've been sharing these on our YouTube channel. And so if you guys have anything or need anything, don't hesitate to reach out to me. Help with connections. I'd love to hear from you. Heidi, I saw your camera just came on. Did you have anything you want to add? You're good? Okay, perfect. Well, anything else? Dion, Kyle, Robert, Daniel, Bobby?
Hey,
No, thank you very much.
Kyle, this is the hemp frisbee.
Awesome.
So I'll shoot you an email.
Okay,
What
perfect.
percentage,
Thanks.
Dave, what percentage of fibers in there?
25%.
All right.
Yeah. We're working on it. And we're
Lovely.
starting our recycling program. Recycling's broken. So we're liquid laundry detergent containers. We're going to keep it real simple. I need those, so we already started collecting those. We're going to grind them up and make frisbees out of them.
Cool.
Very cool.
No,
Yeah.
Mandy, I was just going to say thank you again. I appreciate the opportunity, and it felt good today to just kind of give my rant. And I think it is important because the bureaucrats are just seem dead set on undermining the hemp opportunity. It's terrible.
Well, this is where I'd love to, however I can support you guys. I really am about collaborating. I want to bring this industry together and provide you guys opportunity. There's a love affair going on in our chat. So not before it goes anywhere else. But you guys, I appreciate you. Anything I can do. There's lots going on. Tomorrow we have a textile committee meeting with Eric Halverhals, talking about the hemp textiles and innovation around the fiber for hemp and textile. So Friday at 1:00. Other than that, you guys, thank you very, very much. And reach out to me if you need anything, okay?
Thank you, Mandy.
Thank you, man.
Absolutely.
Y'all guys. Have a great evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Guys, see you later.